The story I'm about to tell remained buried for decades in official Vatican documents, in the testimonies of silenced witnesses, and in the memories of the few who witnessed the events. I wasn't looking for this. The truth found me through a set of time-worn letters sent to me by a former employee of the Vatican Apostolic Library, who in his final days could no longer bear the weight of the knowledge he carried. His name was Giuseppe Mantovani, an archivist who worked at the Vatican between 1958 and 1972. His position gave him access to documents that should never have been seen by unauthorized eyes. The package arrived at my door with no sender, only a yellowed note. "This must be known. Do not look for me." Inside were hundreds of pages of handwritten notes, blurred photographs and transcriptions of secret conversations. The central focus, Father Pio of Pietrelcina and what he discovered within the sacred walls of Vatican City. Father Pio was no ordinary man. Canonized in 2002, he bore the stigmata, the wounds of Christ on his body for over 50 years, a phenomenon never fully explained by science. What few know is that in 1947, he was secretly summoned to the Vatican for a private audience with Pope Pius X. Officially, no record of this visit exists. There are no photographs, no documents, no mentions in papal archives. Yet, in Mantovani's personal diaries, there are meticulous details about what happened that September night. According to the accounts, Father Pio was escorted into the underground vaults of St. Peter's Basilica by two Swiss guards who had explicit instructions not to log his entry. The Capuchin friar, already famed for his mystic gifts, was led through narrow corridors lit only by torches, a deliberate choice despite electricity being widespread in the Vatican at the time. The Pope awaited him in an ancient chamber whose walls were covered in symbols from no known alphabet. "We need your eyes, Father," the pontiff is said to have told him. "You see beyond the veil." That night, Father Pio's stigmata bled profusely, staining the marble floor of the chamber. According to Mantovani's notes, the friar approached the walls and, without touching them, began deciphering the symbols, translating them into Latin so archaic that even the scholars present could not fully understand. What happened next would forever change Father Pio's own understanding of his faith and of the Catholic Church's role in human history. The walls contained a code, not just any code, but a complex mathematical sequence interwoven with altered biblical verses which, once decoded, revealed precise geographical locations across all 5 continents. In a trance, Father Pio spoke for hours as 2 scribes feverishly recorded his words. Mantovani, who accessed these manuscripts years later, noted that the code related to ancient subterranean structures predating Christianity, a kind of global network. Dr. Heinrich Müller, a German archaeologist, discreetly hired by the Vatican after World War II, despite rumors of a Nazi past, was present that night. His notes, also in Mantovani's documents, mention that the coordinates Father Pio revealed coincided with magnetic anomalies that German scientists had detected during secret 1930s expeditions. When charted worldwide, these anomalies formed a perfect dodecahedron with the Vatican at one of its vertices. "What we are seeing are not mere symbols," Müller wrote. "They are instructions." But instructions for what? The notes fragment here. Mantovani suggests a serious disagreement erupted that night between Father Pio and Vatican officials. The friar, disturbed by what he had uncovered, argued passionately that the knowledge should be destroyed, not exploited. Someone present allegedly replied, "It's too late. The excavations began in 1944. After that session, Father Pio fell gravely ill. Official reports cited pleurisy, but Mantovani's confidential medical reports describe inexplicable symptoms. Body temperature fluctuations defying thermodynamics, mild radioactivity emanating from his stigmata, and, most disturbingly, the ability to speak unknown languages during febrile episodes. During his convalescence, Father Pio wrote a series of letters to his confessor, Father Agostino Gemelli. These were immediately seized by the Holy See, but Mantovani managed to photograph 3 before they were sealed in secret archives. Their content is, to say the least, unsettling. What I saw on those walls is neither God's work nor the devil's, but something older than both, Father Pio wrote in one. The symbols speak of guardians and prisoners, of a conflict that predates creation as we know it. The book of Genesis is not the beginning of the story, but merely the chapter we entered. In another letter, he specifically mentioned the Library of Alexandria, suggesting its destruction was no accident, but a deliberate attempt to conceal knowledge of these subterranean structures. The fire that consumed Alexandria was lit by hands that feared what was written about the 7 chambers, he wrote. The same hands now touch the symbols in the Vatican. The third document contained only a complex drawing, a set of concentric circles intersected by straight lines, forming a pattern that, years later, experts in ancient mathematics consulted by Mantovani said represented an equation impossible to solve with contemporary methods. After his recovery, Father Pio was never officially summoned to the Vatican again. However, Mantovani's records show that in 1949, a man named Cardinal Raphael, absent from any official list of cardinals at the time, visited San Giovanni Rotondo, where Pio lived. They spoke behind closed doors for more than 12 hours. The next morning, monks found Father Pio kneeling in his cell in a catatonic state, murmuring again and again, "They are awakening. Their slumber is ending." The following years were marked by a strange cat-and-mouse game between Father Pio and the Vatican. Officially, the friar was placed under prudent observation due to his mystical claims. In reality, Mantovani says he was under constant surveillance. His correspondence was intercepted, his visitors investigated, and listening devices were installed in his cell walls. Still, Father Pio found ways to disseminate fragments of what he'd learned. He began embedding coded messages in his sermons, apparently simple parables which, when carefully analyzed, revealed patterns matching the Vatican wall symbols. Devotees from around the world who visited San Giovanni Rotondo unwittingly became messengers carrying transcripts of these sermons that, when assembled, formed a map. While investigating these events, I discovered I was not alone in seeking this truth. There are others, people who have found fragments of this story in diverse sources, declassified documents, diaries of deceased priests, even codes in Renaissance, paintings that seem to foretell the symbols Father Pio decoded. For those called to this mystery, I suggest you join us on this journey. Knowledge grows when shared, and perhaps together we can complete the puzzle Father Pio left behind. Keep following reports like this to uncover more layers of this hidden truth. But let us return to the story. In 1960, something inexplicable occurred in Rome. For 3 consecutive nights, observers reported strange lights above St. Peter's Basilica. Officially attributed to unusual atmospheric reflections, an amateur photographer captured images showing precise geometric patterns in the lights. Patterns that matched exactly the drawings Father Pio made during his illness. 3 days after this incident, Pope John XXIII announced he would not reveal the third secret of Fatima in 1960, as many had expected. Mantovani noted in his diary, "The secret is not of Fatima. It lies much deeper, reaches much farther." At the same time, American geologist Dr. Robert Menzies was conducting seismographic studies around Rome. His equipment detected what he called resonance chambers, buried deep beneath the city. When he tried to publish his findings, he was invited to a scientific conference in Switzerland and never arrived. His studies were classified by the Italian government as a matter of national security. Mantovani's files include a partial photocopy of Menzis's report, in which the scientist theorizes that these underground chambers were not built but carved around something already there, something he described as technologically impossible for any known civilization. Meanwhile, Father Pio's behavior grew increasingly erratic. In private confessions, he spoke of night visitors, beings he described not as angels or demons, but as ancestors and descendants simultaneously. They showed him visions of an Earth history entirely different from the biblical or scientific narrative. Cycles of rising and falling civilizations, lost technologies, and a purpose for humanity that transcended individual salvation. In 1962, during the Second Vatican Council, a secret commission was formed to address what internal documents called the Pietrelcina question. Chaired by Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani, head of the Holy Office, the commission included clerics, scientists, linguists, and even military cryptography experts. Through a commissary member who later suffered a crisis of conscience and contacted Mantovani, we know the Vatican partially deciphered the code on its walls, independently of Father Pio's translation. The two interpretations diverged on a crucial point. While Father Pio spoke of guardians and prisons, the Vatican's version mentioned receptacles and cedars. In 1965, construction crews working in the Vatican basements to modernize the heating system accidentally discovered a sealed chamber not shown on any architectural plan. Before they could report it, agents of the Holy Office secured the area. The workers were sent home after signing non-disclosure agreements, and the chamber was resealed with concrete. Using his access, Mantovani obtained photographs of the room taken before resealing. The images show a perfectly circular chamber, with an object at its center so blurred the camera could not capture it clearly, a luminous blur where the object should have been. As these events unfolded, Father Pio's health steadily declined. His stigmata bled anew, and he frequently entered ecstatic states in which, witnesses say, his body levitated slightly above the floor. In one episode, secretly recorded on audio by Vatican agents, he spoke continuously for 7 hours in a language experts could not identify, save for a few words that bore phonetic likeness to ancient Sumerian. The transcription of this recording, included in Mantovani's documents, contains a linguist's handwritten note. It is not a language constructed for communication. Its structure suggests a function more mathematical than linguistic. It may be a code, not a tongue. In January 1968, Father Pio received an unexpected visitor. A man listed only as Mr. Kovac in monastery records spent 3 hours with the friar. Kovac claimed to be a Hungarian diplomat, but Mantovani's later investigations found no such official. What we know of the meeting comes from a novice who, alarmed by its length, peered through the keyhole and later reported to his superior. According to this account, Father Pio and the visitor sat in silence, foreheads touching, hands clasped. On the table lay a metallic object the novice described as a dodecahedron engraved with symbols on each face. When the superior entered the room after the visitor left, the object had vanished, and Father Pio lay unconscious, feverish. In the months that followed, Father Pio seemed to regain some strength. He requested permission to travel. Something he rarely did. His requests were denied. He then began sending dozens of letters to recipients around the world. Most were intercepted by the Vatican, but a few reached their destinations. Years later, Mantovani traced 3 recipients: an amateur astronomer in Portugal, a librarian in Argentina, and an archaeologist in Egypt. Each received a seemingly disconnected fragment, a sequence of numbers, an architectural sketch, and a text in archaic Latin. When combined, these fragments formed instructions to locate what Father Pio called the first seal, apparently one vertex of the global dodecahedron he had identified years earlier. In August 1968, less than a month before his death, Father Pio asked for a final confession. Unusual for a priest who normally heard confessions rather than made them, his request was granted. The friar who heard it, Father Franco Martelli, disappeared 3 days later. Officially, he was said to have departed for a mission in Africa, but no record of his arrival exists. His name vanishes from all church documents thereafter. In the early hours of September 23, 1968, Father Pio died. Officially, it was natural causes, cardiac failure from old age and weakened health. But Mantovani's papers include an unofficial medical report never released publicly. It notes disturbingly, no rigor mortis after 12 hours, body temperature held at 36 degrees for 38 hours after death declared, unexplained phenomenon. Even more striking, the stigmata Father Pio bore for over 50 years had vanished completely. No scars, no marks, no indication they'd ever existed. His funeral drew thousands of the faithful. Few know that on the night before the ceremony, his body was secretly removed from the coffin for 3 hours. Mantovani's documents suggest Vatican scientists took him to a makeshift laboratory for detailed examinations, including full-body X-rays and tissue sampling. Those findings were never disclosed, but Mantovani records one doctor's remark: his DNA shows anomalies unlike any known condition. The molecular structure in certain tissue regions appears reconfigured. After Father Pio's death, strange events began at sites corresponding to the dodecahedron's vertices. In Sedona, Arizona, known for its alleged energy vortices, magnetic measurement devices registered inexplicable readings in regular 33-day cycles. In the Bimini region of the Bahamas, divers reported underwater lights moving in precise geometric formations. Near the Great Pyramid of Giza, seismic sensors detected rhythmic vibrations from depths beyond current technological reach. During this period, the Vatican launched what it called Project Custodian, officially dedicated to preserving ancient religious artifacts. In reality, according to Mantovani, it was a global operation to locate, study, and possibly contain whatever lay at the dodecahedron's vertices. In 1972, an expedition by Project Custodian to a remote region of Tibet ended in tragedy. Of the 12 team members, only 2 returned, both afflicted with an unknown form of radiation causing cellular mutations unprecedented in medical literature. The expedition leader, Father Marcus Lentini's final diary entries described finding a crystalline structure in a cave, pulsing with its own light and responding to human presence. At that point, Giuseppe Mantovani decided to abandon his Vatican post. His final notes suggest he'd uncovered links between Project Custodian and an older church order, the Vigiles Portarum, Gate Watchers, said to have existed since the 4th century AD. The last document I received is Mantovani's personal letter, dated 3 days before his official death from a heart attack in 1987. What Father Pio discovered was not a code, but a key. The Vatican walls do not contain information, but a mechanism, a switch activated when he deciphered the symbols. The dodecahedron is not a physical structure, but an energy field dormant for millennia. Now it is awakening, and no one knows what will happen when all vertices are active. I feel watched. This will reach you only if my precautions suffice. Seek the marks of Pietrelcina, not the stigmata, but the symbols he left behind. They are hidden in plain sight, in everyday objects, in public places. Together they form a map not of places, but of moments, specific instants when the veils between worlds grow thin. One more thing. Father Pio's night visitors. They did not come from elsewhere. They have always been here. We are the visitors. After receiving these documents, I spent years independently verifying the information. Some details I could confirm. Father Martelli's inexplicable absence from official records after 1968, the magnetic phenomena in Sedona, even the existence of the mysterious Cardinal Raphael, who appears in a single uncatalogued photograph in Italian National Archives. Other elements remain elusive. The precise geographic coordinates of the dodecahedron's vertices, for example, seem intentionally fragmented across documents, as if Mantovani feared they might be used for nefarious purposes. In my own investigation, I found disturbing signs that Project Custodian still operates, now under a new name and with vastly advanced technology. Private satellites monitoring remote regions, scientific expeditions disguised as environmental studies, even subtle alterations in official maps to conceal certain geographic features. The true scope of what Father Pio uncovered remains a mystery. Are these subterranean structures relics of a pre-human civilization? Alien technology? Physical manifestations of dimensional realities usually beyond our perception, or more unsettling? Still, exactly what some interpretations of the texts Father Pio revealed suggest: cosmic prisons designed to contain something that must never be freed. What we know for certain is that Father Pio bore this knowledge as a burden for decades, trying both to warn humanity and protect it from the full truth. His stigmata, the wounds of Christ he carried, may not have been a divine sign as many believed, but a physical manifestation of his contact with what lay within the structures he helped identify. In the years since I received Mantovani's documents, I've watched emerging patterns that confirm aspects of his narrative: the global rise in magnetic anomalies, governments' renewed interest in deep underground detection technologies, the unexplained deaths or disappearances of researchers delving too close to prehistoric archaeology or quantum physics applied to megalithic structures. I share this story not to alarm, but to prepare. If Father Pio's discovery is true, we are living at a pivotal moment in human history, one foretold in esoteric traditions, from Maya cycles to Hopi prophecies, from Norse Ragnarok to the Hindu concept of transitions between yugas. But one question haunts me, one that perhaps only you, reader, can answer. If the structures form a dodecahedron with specific vertices around the world, what lies at its center? What exists at the geometric heart of this global pattern? And if the Vatican is only one vertex, why was it chosen as the site where the code would be revealed? Perhaps the answer is closer than we think. Perhaps it resides within each of us, encoded in our own DNA, another perfect geometric pattern carrying information beyond current science. After all, it is no coincidence that the anomalies found in Father Pio's cellular tissue after death mirrored exactly the mathematical structures described on the Vatican walls. Time is running out. The signals grow stronger, more frequent. What will you do with this information? Dismiss it as an elaborate fiction, or begin your own quest for the truth? The next chapter of this story may depend on your choice.